Good evening, everybody. My name is Colin Benini, and I am the governor of the great state of West Virginia and your host of Power Live. We had a little bit of technical difficulties earlier in the day. However, everything is fixed and we are back. And today we are going to continue to explore the ins and outs of the power world, from financial takeovers to political struggles. Power Live will show you the true power of information. Alright, everybody, thank you for bearing with us. We have had a couple technical difficulties here, but everything is fixed, and we are ready for this episode of Power Live. First, I have to introduce to you the panelists for today's episode. Keep in mind that the panelist and being on a panel was open to every single political party, every single country. However, the only people that responded and wanted to be on the panels were from the Democratic Party. However, I hope that we can see a couple more personal views, rather than just the views of the Democratic Party on this, and I'll help as well. But first, I'm going to introduce Governor Bobby Monahan of the great state of Vermont. We also have Charlie Lawton, Congressional Majority Leader and Democrat from the state of New York. And finally, we have Representative Gregory Malafort, Democrat from the great state of Illinois. All right, guys. So today we're going to start with U.S. news. Okay, U.S.
All right.
news is what we're starting with today. And the first thing on the agenda is the U.S. wars. We know that the USA is at war currently with Turkey and Argentina. A little bit of backstory for people that don't know. Charlie, you're blowing into your mic. Regardless, Turkey went to war with the Netherlands. The United States is allied with the Netherlands, and the USA and a whole bunch of other countries jumped in to help defend the Netherlands from Turkey, and now Turkey is just in war with everyone. The other war is the Argentinian War, which actually is a more recent war. Argentina declared war on the U.S. Argentina isn't doing too well, if you could imagine, but Argentina is also fighting itself. Also fun. However, the main issue here, and what we're going to talk about, is although there has been numerous peace deals put through through Congress to try to get peace accepted, I'm pretty sure that a peace agreement has yet to be agreed on, or maybe it was yesterday, but the one with Argentina hasn't been agreed on yet. I know that. So let's just start with Charlie Lawton, actually. You are the congressional majority leader. I know you're looking to push these peace bills through. How is the war affecting the U.S., and why is it so crucial that the U.S. and Congress specifically votes to get these bills passed?
Well, currently, as you can see, these wars are having a pretty devastating effect on our overall government approval. It's plummeted, and it's really no fault of our own. We were sucked into these wars. No one wanted to be at war. Well, right now, we have two peace treaties that have been negotiated by Secretary of State Kennedy, and they're both being voted on. One of them was filibustered. I'm not sure by whom. The peace deal with Turkey was filibustered yesterday, and we are working as hard as we can to make sure that it passes.
I'm just looking here. It is passing almost unanimously in the Senate. 43 votes to 1 right now. However, in the House, when it comes to the Turkey bill, it's actually losing right now in the House, and
Yes.
it's also filibuster, so it's going to even take even more votes than just flipping it. So, what do you have to say to all the people that may have voted against the peace treaty, or maybe some of the people who haven't voted yet who are still making up their minds? What do you have to say to them?
Well, first, as you know, there was an election today, flipping control of the House of Representatives from the GOP to the Democratic Party. So many of the votes of the no votes on the peace deal with Turkey were GOP members of the House who are no longer there. So now that we have the majority, I have yet to release today's Democratic members of Congress, and we will be whipping this bill hard to make sure that it passes in the next 13 hours.
One of these people that you are talking about when it comes to members of the House that are Democratic that you want to vote that way, one of them is Gregory Malafort, representative from Illinois. So, being a representative, I don't know if you still are, if you were just one in the past, these bills that need to go through, I mean, it comes down to the individual members of Congress, and you know, do you like what is your sense in Congress, Gregory? Like, are people really trying to push this bill through? Like, where do you think the resistance is coming from? Because, you know, there's not really, I can't really see like one party necessarily that's voting against it.
Well, I think the resistance might be coming from that natural patriotism that comes with most of us Americans. Most of us want to see this war to the end, not want to have a white peace. So that might be something to do with it.
And then finally, let's go to Governor Monahan of Vermont. Being a governor, you don't have too much of a say in exactly what happens in these wars. However, being a governor and how it's affecting the U.S. economy, and it's also affecting the state economies of every single state in the union. Being the governor of West Virginia, I know it's affecting my state's economy. I'm sure it's also affecting the economy of Vermont. So, like, what do you have to say? Like, how is it affecting Vermont, and what would you like to see happen in the future?
Oh, of course. Whenever we're in these kinds of international entanglements, this hurts everybody. Everyone from Vermont all the way to California and everyone in between. It's that can't go on for so long. The war weariness will just continue to grow. Economy, of course, is not, and a big factor in that is these unnecessary foreign entanglements. But that being said, Congress, I was leaving it in the hands of one Charlie Loughton, and I have full confidence in him, in his whip team, in Secretary of State Kennedy, and in Secretary of Defense Chan, that they're doing everything in their power to bring the world back to peace and to reclaim peace in our time for the United States of America.
All right. So that talks a little bit about the wars that are going on, and one of the most major effects that are like one of the most major things that's actually coming from these wars is we've already kind of talked about it a little bit but that's actually the effect on the U.S.
Oh,
economy.
what the hell?
So, we are going to. I'm gonna pull up the federal budget right now for the U.S. The national. So this was brought up to my attention by actually not a member of the U.S. but a member of China brought this to my attention that before Bernie Sanders took office, the United States was at a national surplus of almost $3 trillion. However, since the Bernie Sanders presidency, he has the debt has not only the surplus has not only flipped into debt, but has also increased substantially. We are now at over $12 trillion in debt. That's over a $15 trillion deficit in one presidency. Oh, I'm sorry. There was let me rephrase that. There was a $10 trillion surplus that is now flipped to a $12 trillion deficit. So, this is Bernie's presidency. This is his legacy. He's running for a second term. Do the people of this country, are they really going to re-elect someone who has literally in his first term as president created a $22 trillion deficit? Like, is that what America needs? Is that what America wants? Let's start with who wants to start?
I'd like to
I can
jump in.
start. Oh,
Oh, Bobby, you can go ahead.
yeah.
Well, I think it's an unfair bait to attribute the entire collapse to President Sanders himself. And I'm sure Senator Loughton will be able to elaborate on exactly what's been going on in the Senate and the House to try to rescue this economy. Pitting it all on President Sanders is definitely a tough thing to do. There were some big companies that collapsed right as he was coming into office, and that kind of set a downward spiral. But that's just what I want to say is to consider here, and it would be immature to simply pin it on one person just because he's in the White House.
I can actually respect that. I do want to bring up one thing. One possible reason for the majority of the deficit has actually, as some papers across the country have been reporting, they've actually been contributing it not to Bernie Sanders necessarily, but to the nationalization of the U.S.'s sectors in every field. that, like I said, it can't necessarily be contributed to Bernie, given that he's not in Congress. He's just the president. However, we actually have Charlie Lawton here. You are the congressional majority leader for the Democrats. You were one of the people that were working so hard to nationalize all of these sectors and privatize all of them. Um, and like I said, we're not going to have a debate about what kind of economy is better, whether it's a free market, whether it's a nationalized economy. We're not going to get into that debate because that's just pulling teeth, and no one wants to get into that. However, you can see that after the sectors were nationalized, maybe this isn't the only reason why. Of course, there's probably more, but after all the sectors were nationalized, the debt, it was a $22 trillion swing towards a deficit. So, do you believe that nationalizing the sectors was a good call at this point, or would you, if you could go back, would you change it? What do you think, Charlie?
Um, I would not change it. So here's what happened. So uh, I got online one day and saw that Lidl, the corporation Lidl, owned uh, nearly every sector in the United States. It controlled everything.
Right.
And whoever was running Lidl at the time completely crashed every single sector. The corporation was going under. The corporation was going under. Every single sector had negative growth. The GDP was shrinking at a massive rate. Unemployment was skyrocketing. So the original reason we nationalized is because there had been a bug in the corporate tax um, that took away money from the revenue. So the corporate tax. So we started with nationalizing most of the sectors to avoid having any corporate tax, so that bug wouldn't lose us more money. So, and to make sure that these sectors that were owned by Lidl didn't keep shrinking at such a massive rate. If you look at the GDP growth from when the crash began to after we nationalized, it shrunk. It started out as shrinking at 15%. 15%. And after we nationalized, it went down to 2%, which it's been at stagnant for the past several weeks. But
I mean, so from what I'm hearing is that so the GDP growth in America the GDP was plummeting,
yes, at
and that happened
15%.
15%, which is under the after what happened, the companies, the corporations, and everything. That's understandable. However, it seems that nationalizing the sectors was a way to stop the short-term problem, but in the end, the GDP is still decreasing. Maybe not by a 15%, but by the 2.58% that we see right here. So, um, you know, in regards to nationalizing the sectors, yes, you stopped the economy from getting tremendously worse overnight, but every day that nothing else is done, it's still decreasing by more and more and more.
Yes.
And maybe if it was, you can't necessarily blame it on Bernie's presidency, but he is the president, and his first term is going to be remembered as the worst downfall in America of American economy that we've ever seen in power. There's never been a $22 trillion deficit in just one term. So,
Well,
although
that the $22 trillion deficit was due mostly in part to the corporate tax bug at the beginning.
okay, I understand that, but the thing is, the fact that it happened under his presidency, you can still attribute it to him. Because it is happening in his term. But I do want to get Gregory's comment on this before we move on to the next thing. But so Gregory, you hear all of this. Like I said, maybe it wasn't Bernie's fault. Maybe it wasn't even anything that happened in his administration. But given that it's happening in his administration, it's getting attributed to him. Like, how do you think the Democrats handled this well? Do you think that they handled it the way that they should have, or what do you think?
In my personal opinion, I don't think we've handled this that well. It seems like we nationalized the sectors for too long, and that caused a massive deficit to occur. And it seems like because of that, we've basically. I partially attribute it to Bernie because he hasn't. Bernie is the as basically the president is like the secondary leader of the party. He's supposed to be on top of things in the party in the same way that the chairman is supposed to be. But and I partially blame this on the chairman and the whips too. I think that they could have handled this a lot better. But personally, I just think that it's been a very disorganized among us Democrats, and I'm hoping that we can improve things in the future.
I do have to. We're actually gonna move on to the next topic here, which is actually kind of along the lines of the same thing. So this is like I said, we've talked about how this has happened in Bernie Sanders' term, his first term as president. There's a presidential election that is happening in, in just under. I want to be 100%. Let me pull this up real quick. Presidential election is happening in 91 hours. So just almost 4 days away. A little under 4 days. So you know, you look at the government approval. Government approval is way down in the United States. I think government approval. Actually, let me look at it. I think it's like what was it 30%, something like that. Oh, 28% government approval. Bernie's presidency. The people, 28% of people approving of his presidency. You know, the election that's coming up. Could we see a switch to a different party? Could we see another party taking control because the United States? And the thing is, if the GDP growth is still a negative 2.5%, so even if Bernie wins this term, as the GDP keeps going down under a Democratic president, government approval will continue to go down, national stability will go down. It's a matter of time before another party swoops in and takes over because the people will get fed up. So let's start with Bobby Monahan. I haven't heard from you in a while. Even if this isn't Bernie's fault, that's irrelevant at this point because since it's under his presidency, it's being attributed to him. The way that the country's going and what's happened over his last term, one, do you think Bernie can win a second term? And two, even if he does win, what's the outlook for the Democratic Party for future terms, especially if government approval continues to go down?
Thank you. Well, first of all, it definitely is an issue that we need to, fix. We need to get peace in our time. We need to economy back on track. That said, and they are still showing in full force support for President Sanders. He's currently polling at 63.4%. Is sending a very clear message that the people still have faith in him and his administration. Fix this. I think people saw how adamantly the congressional leadership team acted in the face of economic collapse and were in their resolve in knowing what we had to do. And while some aspects of the plan haven't worked as hoped, there's definitely a well-organized machine working in the Congress and working with the president right now. If anything, the voters seem to be trending more Democratic, and the reason for that is because to be the only party effective at organizing themselves and effective legislation done. So perhaps with even a more democratic government, we'll be able to get this economy back on track and reclaim peace in our time.
So actually, the president himself actually just appeared in the Power Lab discussion and said, I quote, "Don't blame Lawton. Don't blame Lawton. Lawton only did what I commanded." So let's go to you, Lawton. So Bernie is pretty much saying that nationalizing all the sectors. Yes, you pushed for it, but it was under orders of the president. So, um, whether the economic collapse is to be attributed to the nationalizing of the sectors. To some, it may look that way. To others, they may, it just may not register to them. Basically that happened and that's what caused it. However, it doesn't matter if you believe that that's the reason why or not. First off, number one, can you confirm that Bernie Sanders did direct you to pass the nationalization of the sectors? Just first off.
So, in the immediate wake of the collapse, I was talking to leadership, and we were brainstorming what we could do.
Including Bernie Sanders, correct? Including the
Bernie
president.
Sanders, yes.
Okay.
It was the senior leadership and the congressional leadership, and we decided to immediately, as a short-term solution, to prevent the GDP from completely collapsing at shrinking at 15% each term. To do that, we thought the best short-term solution was to immediately nationalize the sectors.
Okay,
Hello?
so what you're saying is that, like I said, regardless of what people feel was the cause of the economic collapse, regardless of if they think it was the nationalization of the sectors or not, for the people that do believe that nationalizing the sectors was the issue, and are mad at the Congress that passed it, what you could say that they should instead be mad at Democratic senior leadership, including the president, for directing Congress to do such a thing. So, for the people that do blame the nationalization of the sectors for the downfall of the U.S. economy, what you're saying is that it is directly Bernie Sanders and Democratic leadership who told you to whip such votes.
It was a consensus reached by all the Democratic leadership, including myself.
And including President Bernie Sanders.
Yes, but
So,
I want.
Well, just one thing. So,
Yeah.
go ahead, Charlie. You have the floor.
I want to emphasize that the nationalization of these sectors, whether people believe this or not, did not cause the crash of the economy. It caused debt, but saved our GDP and unemployment from complete collapse. Unemployment was upwards of 10%. It's dropped to about 8% now, and it's been stagnant there. We're in the midst of privatizing these sectors after making them more profitable. We say, with nationalizing of the sectors, we stopped the GDP from completely collapsing, and now we're privatizing it again. We've also made those sectors more profitable as they were crashing under Lytle, and now we're in the midst of privatizing them again so the private sector can handle them.
So,
I think undoubtedly that nationalizing the sectors was positive for the U.S. Did hurt our, and we may have to pass some tax increases to lower it again. It helped the economy.
In the end, what you're saying is that, well, regardless of whether you believe that it was the nationalization or not that caused the economic collapse, the truth of the matter is that the sectors were nationalized, and after they were nationalized, whether it was a short-term fix or not, sectors are nationalized, and now there's a $22 trillion deficit in one presidential term.
There isn't a $22 trillion deficit right now.
No, I'm sorry. There was a $22 trillion loss in the budget, not a deficit. Yes. Regardless of whether you believe that it was nationalization or not, that happened. There is now a deficit. There is now a deficit where there was a surplus, and Bernie Sanders pushed for something that happened that may have potentially led to it. You don't have to believe that it did or not, but he pushed for something that some people believe led to this. Regardless, let's Gregory, I haven't heard from you on this topic yet. You actually came out vocally against some of what Democrat leadership chose to do in regards to the economy. So what do you have to say in regards to Bernie Sanders? It just got. I mean, it's almost breaking news, you could say, that because Bernie tried to distance himself from the nationalization of the sectors a little bit, but now it's coming out that he was one of the ones that was pushing for it harder than anyone. So what do you have to say in regards to that, Gregory? The nationalization of the sectors was Bernie Sanders' idea, among others, of course. However, he was pushing for it, and look at the economy after they were nationalized. So, what do you have to say in regards to that, Gregory?
Okay, first of all, Charlie, I thought you told me that that the nationalization was for the war in China.
That was the second round of nationalization. There was a first round of nationalization which happened before Bernie Sanders won the presidential election. Round of nationalization, which happened this week, was because we were preparing for war with China. We were expecting that we were going to be going to war with China, and
actually, let me just point something out. I forgot to mention this. Charlie, also, you just mentioned that GDP is down, economy is kind of crashing and collapsing. You said that another short-term, so the first short-term fix was the nationalization of the sectors, which some may say that it was a good fix, some may say it's still not looking too good. Regardless, that doesn't matter. You also just said that your next short-term fix would be to raise taxes. You know, in the past, and I think we can just say in all of American history, raising taxes is not necessarily the most favorable thing when it comes to the American people, to the the 150,000 Americans, and those Americans that vote, the 150,000 Americans that actually vote in the elections. So you know, raising these taxes, is that going to whether it's a short-term fix or not, it's irrelevant. The people are going to be the ones that suffer. Can Bernie Sanders, after nationalizing sectors, raising taxes, this is his platform. This is what he's doing. Whether it's a fix or not, it still hurts the individual American, the one that's bringing home a weekly paycheck, struggling to make ends meet, and now the government's taking more money from them to fix its sectors and its corporations, not to benefit the individual American. So,
Well,
like, I know that you can't. I know that you can't speak for the president. However, it seems that the DNC leadership and the president's making you speak for them, because you're the one that's whipping these bills that they're telling you to push for. So what do you have to say?
With if I disagree with a bill that the leadership wants pushed, if I will, and there will be a discussion, and then we'll come to a consensus, is almost always walking in lockstep. We almost always agree. But as far as raising taxes, I don't intend to raise taxes on the people. We will be raising corporate taxes the money that will be coming into the budget, corporations. So if it's foreign corporations, we'll raise tariffs, and if it's domestic corporations, we'll raise corporate taxes. We don't any more than we have to.
American economy and American corporations are struggling right now. American, so maybe you're not raising taxes that will affect the individual American, but what if that individual American owns or works at a corporation, and now the government is taking more money from that person, from that business, and then with these higher tax rates, maybe these companies that are still struggling to get back to where they were after such a such a horrendous economic decline, businesses are gonna have to start letting people go. You're gonna have to worry about people losing their jobs. Unemployment will
Due to
increase.
corporate taxes?
Thing is, these corporations are struggling as it is. If corporations were set in stone, if American corporations were set in stone and they weren't facing, the economic struggles that they were, then it wouldn't even be an issue. But the fact that American corporations are struggling. Some of the weakest corporations in the world are in America right now. Corporations that used to be leagues above others in the world are struggling, and is raising the corporate tax going to it may benefit the country, it may benefit the government, it may benefit a Bernie Sanders presidency, but is it going to benefit, the individual workers in those companies? Is it going to benefit, those people, because they're the ones that are going to end up feeling it?
Well, I never said we would 100% be raising corporate taxes. I said whatever corporations end up getting are privatized, we will be taxing those. So if it ends up only being foreign corporations, then there will only be tariffs.
Okay.
If somehow a successful domestic corporation arises and it's stable, then we'll raise the corporate tax. But we're not sure yet. We have to
wait.
Getting our
Just
sectors.
one? Just one corporation? We can't just rely on one corporation.
I'm not saying we will. I'm saying I don't run corporations. Whatever corporations end up getting our sectors, those are the ones that will be taxed if they're stable. And also, I want to say, you keep talking about the electoral harm this will have on the president and the Democratic Party. If you look at the presidential election right now, 3% of the vote. Bernie Sanders is polling at over 63% and 402 electoral votes. That's a modern-day landslide. If the people were unhappy with the Bernie Sanders presidency, they would throw him out of office and our party with him. And it seems right now that they have no intention of doing that.
I guess that we will see in 4 days. And I'm sure that Bernie, like I said, I'm sure that the president has nothing but good but goodwill in mind for the American people. And I guess we have to see how if the American people have goodwill in mind for Bernie Sanders as their president. However, we're going to move into our world news segment right now, which actually is kind of more regarding the U.S. as well, because it's kind of all stemming from the U.S. this week. And I just have a question for you guys. It's just an individual question for both of you. The United States of America. We'll go hear from Gregory first, and then we'll talk to Charlie. The question I have for you, Gregory, is: at this point in American history, the United States of America, are they a pillar of strength that the world can rely on and lean on, or are they a pillar of weakness? Gregory, what is your take on that?
Right now, I'm thinking. Right now, I'm thinking of. Uh, we're the pillar of. Please stop asking us to go to war with you guys. Please. I, I think it's. I think we just need some time to recover from this. It's not helping that we're in like two or three wars right now, and we just need some time to recover. We can't. Uh, we can't keep on. Bernie can't keep on and going to war with our allies with the current state of the economy. I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to make some sacrifices alliance wise.
That is a very that is a very that's well that's a point that a lot of people are trying to make. Because regardless of if the economic of the if the economy is on the rise or the fall, it's irrelevant. These wars are not benefiting the United States. They're not benefiting the allies of the United States. And something has to be done. In regards to that, Charlie, I know you said that you're trying to go for peace. However, reports have just came out of the Middle East and out of Turkey that says that the U.S. have redeployed forces on the Turkish front. That doesn't seem like peace to me. You have anything to respond to that?
Well, right now Turkey's still at war with us. Once a peace treaty is confirmed, we will withdraw all troops immediately. But right now we're still at war, and we have to defend our troops. But yes, we are pushing for peace. Right now, we are a nation in recovery. We have a recovering economy, and with the privatization, things will be improving. We should not be at war right now because we can't afford to be at war right now. We need to be recovering.
Okay, and I think that everyone in America, whether it be politicians, whether it be the president, whether it be the American citizens, I think that all of them agree that war is not beneficial to anyone in the United States. And for the financial news panel today, we were just going to talk about the global economy. I think we've talked quite a bit about the global economy and the effects that it's having.
Yes, we have.
Um, but yeah, like I said, the president is facing a lot of backlash from some of the things that have happened under his administration, whether they have been directly attributed to him, whether they should be or not. Some say that's irrelevant. Some say that it's not. Everyone can make their own opinion, and the 150 million Americans that go to the polls are going to make that decision themselves. Um, However, I guess we'll find out in 4 days. Which I'll tell you guys right now, the next episode of Power Live will be let's see, 4 days. That's what Wednesday, I think. Wednesday, the day of the presidential election. The Power Live will be live for another election day special. We will call the states for you right here. We will be looking for an election day panel again to see if people can help us, talk about these states as we're getting the calls. But yeah, I think that the last election day special was a really big hit. I really enjoyed it, and we're going to do it again for this upcoming election and every single election after that as well. So yes, the 32nd presidential election is coming up. It is Bernie Sanders versus Otto versus George Lopez. And we'll see what America decides. If they think that Bernie Sanders is still the president that they want, then he will win. If they believe that a change is needed, we will see. But I just want to thank you again, Charlie and Gregory, for being on today.
Thank
It
you.
was nice to hear from you guys. Charlie, you cleared up a lot of things regarding the mindset of the Democratic Party and where these decisions were coming from. And Gregory, you offered a voice of reason from inside the Democratic Party um, about that. I'm also getting word that there is about to be some sort. About to be another war. Hold on, let me see.
Hmm.
What?
Hold on. I'm getting breaking news here. I'm just trying to sift through this. Hold on. They said wait 2 minutes. All right. Anyway, if any breaking news does come on the air, I will let you all know. But we still have one more segment for today. We still have power tops and power bottoms. So Charlie and Gregory, I am going to let you know. I'm gonna we'll let you guys know on the show. But again, thank you for being here, and we will talk to you guys next time. All right. Have a great day, both of
Thank you
you.
for having us.
Thank you.
All right. So we now have um we now have one of the most famous segments on Power Live, which is Power Tops and Power Bottoms. A reminder, uh, a reminder is that this segment looks at the tops and bottoms of the power world, and we are going to look at a couple right now as we are waiting for a potential. We're waiting for a potential breaking news story revolving a war that's happening. Um, Okay. Anyway, so let's do power. We have 1 minute until we get some breaking news on the wars. However, we're gonna start right here. Um, our first power top is actually going to go to the Democratic Party for maintaining a well, not necessarily maintaining, but holding a congressional majority. Not even a plurality at this point. I think it's a plurality in the House. However, they do have a Senate majority, and if we go to the House here, they've officially flipped the congressional the House over to them as well. So that's a power top, goes to the Democratic Party. Another power top is going to have to go to the country of China. China, in a way, China by themselves, in a way, are controlling the entirety of world politics. They their economic system is controlling the rest of the world. Their government and their politicians are making deals with other countries that are pretty much whatever China wants to happen is what happens right now. So we're gonna have to give them a power. We're gonna have to give them a power top for sure. We're also gonna go to power bottoms. The first power bottom is gonna go to the USA, and I guess you could also contribute it to Bernie Sanders for the falling U.S. economy. So, the U.S. economy, like I said, it was at a $10 trillion surplus when the GOP were in office. Now, after one term of a Democratic president, it's down to a $12 trillion debt. So, like I said, you can contribute it to the president. You can contribute it to the Democratic Party. You can contribute it to outside factors. It doesn't matter. Regardless, the U.S. economy is going to get a power bottom for that. And then the last thing is we must take a look at another power bottom, which is going to go to Russia. Russia is a nation that has always thought that it was big in the world stage. However, they've talked a lot of talk and tried to walk the walk, but always end up surrendering. So I guess the current president of China, of Russia. Let me just go to Russia real quick and see who the current president is. We have Prime Minister Georgy Zhukov. He is going to have to get a power bottom for continuing Russia's just kind of way of talking the talk but not being able to walk the walk, and that's going to go to Prime Minister Georgy Zhukov. Next, we're going to take a look at the world news when it comes to some wars here. A lot of breaking news. We do have fighting now between China and Russia. That is very interesting. I don't know if they've been. I don't even know if there's a war or not going on between China and Russia. That's very interesting here. Regardless, China and Russia are now fighting, and China is winning. Not really surprisingly. But yeah, it looks like although President Bernie Sanders claimed that there were no troops on the front line, it looks like Turkey and the USA are fighting, and there are troops on the front. So I don't know if that was I don't know if Bernie Sanders misspoke. I don't know if somebody did something behind his back, but the USA has 880,000 people on the front. I don't know if that looks like a peace deal or not. I mean, I personally don't think it does, but like I said, you can make your own decision. Is almost 1 million soldiers on the Turkish front an act of peace, or is it an act of aggression? And, Bernie Sanders as the president, he can kind of talk to his Secretary of Defense, to tell them where to deploy the troops and stuff like that. But, the United Congressional Majority Leader Charlie Lawton and Gregory Malafort, two members of the Democratic Party, both said that the Democrats did not want to go through a war. A war is not in the favor of anyone. It's not in favor of the people. It's not in favor of the president. Any of this. Yet, at the same time, we see that the USA is deploying troops and fighting another war and continuing to fight the war that they said they were trying to get out of. So if the Democrats are saying one thing, that war hurts the United States and they don't want to be in a war, yet they put almost 1 million soldiers on the front, is that really... Are they being hypocritical? Are they going back on their word? Or are they just straight lying to the American people? We'll see this situation as it unfolds. In 4 days, we do have the presidential election, and we will figure out what is going on. These global declarations are quite interesting right now. You guys can go look at these. It's a lot of LARPing is going on. The president of Turkey has called Bernie a liar, a warmonger, and an aggressor. Very fun stuff. However, we are going to end up cutting this episode of Power Live right here. We're going to keep you guys updated on what happens between the United States and Turkey and other countries as China now fights Russia. Global war. This could be World War III, World War IV, World War V. I don't even know what world war we're on right now. There's been so many world wars. However, we're going to see, what does it mean for Bernie Sanders as the president of the United States? What does it mean for the United States as a whole? What does it mean for the economy of the United States? All of these questions will be answered next time as we continue to expose the true power of information. Have a great night, everybody.